All right, starting now.
Well, good evening, MSK family. We are excited to be with you for our Fossil Black History Month wrap up event. I'm Dr. Ed Jackson, one of the faculty here, and it's an honor to be able to spend time with some esteemed colleagues that join me this evening. Before we get to their introductions, I just want to say thank you to all of the speakers, presenters, everyone that's been organizing and planning and strategizing this Fossil Black History Month series. It's been amazing. It's been inspiring. There's been so many amazing topics discussed and questions asked and answered. And I think it just allows us to continue the momentum of where we are trying to go and the culture that we are continuing to create. So with that being said, we want to welcome everyone to this particular event, which is called A Journey to the Present. A Journey to the Present, a roundtable discussion about race and the impact of career development. And I have the honor of introducing our panelists this evening. First, Dr. Augie Kondua, who's one of our sports medicine doctors, Dr. Fraser Kitt, who does non-operative sports medicine, Dr. Michelle Coleman, who does foot and ankle surgery, and then finally, Dr. Brian Whitfield, who does our sports medicine hip surgery. And Dr. Whitfield just wants to tell us a little story before I introduce Dr. Patterson.
Thanks, Ed. Yeah, I wanted to address this. I was in the mountains with my family this weekend and in a stream, walking on some rocks with my kids, slipped, fell, and unfortunately the first thing to hit was my nose on a rock. So broke it, had it reset on Monday, hence the cast, and I forewent makeup, so forgive the bruising under the eyes. I hope we can all look past that during this talk. It's never a good time to get hurt, and this was certainly one of those cases.
But I told Dr. Whitfield, hey man, I don't care what you look like, but your brain is amazing, so we need you here. And your heart is as well. So I also want to introduce Josh, who is doing our hosting this evening, but he's a part of our discussion as well. He's one of our administrators in the finance and clinical side, and he's been a partner in the fossil efforts. So just want to introduce Josh as well. And without further ado, I want to introduce an esteemed colleague of mine, Dr. Michael Patterson. I want to read Dr. Patterson's bio so that everybody can know who he is and where he has come from and where he is now. And then I'll toss it over to Dr. Patterson. So Dr. Patterson is an educator, an ordained minister, and leadership development coach who for decades has committed his life to empower and elevate the lives of men, young boys, married couples, and parents. His work has been instrumental in strengthening families, bonds, and increasing effectiveness of teachers and individuals serving in leadership capacity with the youth. A native of Florida, Michael earned his BA in Arts, History, and a Master's of Science in History from Florida State University. He is currently an adjunct professor at the prestigious Morehouse College, and most recently received his doctorate in education and organizational leadership with an emphasis in higher education. Finally, Michael has served as a full-time minister for the last 30 years. He currently serves as one of the pastors for the Path Church, a dynamic and growing congregation located in the city of Atlanta, Georgia. He has been married to the love of his life, Sean Patterson, for 30 years, and they have 2 adult children. So without further ado, I want to toss it over to Dr. Patterson. Again, we welcome anybody to, if you have questions for the panelists or Dr. Patterson, please put them in the question and answering section, and we will work those in. Josh will get us to work those in throughout our discussion. So without any further ado, Dr. Patterson, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Dr. Jackson. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to be a part of this conversation, and I look forward to just engaging and moderating the talk. Let's talk, how has it been so far? I know you've had a month of events. We're going into the last week of Black History Month. So how would you describe your interactions thus far, your experiences?
So I would know for me, I've heard that there's been some just amazing conversations that have been taking place. People have been very encouraged, inspired by the discussions that we've been having, the openness and the honesty. There's conversation happening at all different levels of the organization, from our front desk staff to our pre-cert people, all the way to our physicians and our leadership team. So I think it's been an amazing time of just reflection and growth. I don't know if any of the other panelists have any thoughts that they've heard or things that they've felt.
I would echo that. I think it's been also refreshing to hear honest conversations and honest, feelings surrounding race and diversity and equity.
Excellent. Excellent. I just wanted to get a feel. Well, I can be honest with you. Just waiting for everyone to log on. I can tell you guys have an incredible chemistry here. So I'm sure we will have a nice, robust conversation. So it is Black History Month. Dr. Charles Drew, what do we know about Dr. Charles Drew? That's for my panelists there, if anyone can enlighten us.
Don't know. I know that he was a physician that started, I want to say back in the 1930s, I believe, a pioneer in the field of surgery, I want to say.
Okay.
And helped develop blood banking and different transfusion techniques as well.
Okay, Dr. Frazier, you were about to say something?
No.
Yes, Dr. Charles Drew. He was a pioneer African-American doctor who was instrumental during World War II, helping with blood banks. Now, it's so funny because I grew up learning about Dr. Charles Drew and how he was instrumental in helping with blood transfusions, creating blood banks. And I was told that Dr. Charles Drew died because a white hospital refused to give him service, that he was in a bad car accident. This was during the era of segregation, and they told him to go to a Black hospital. So as I was preparing for this, I said, wow, since we're talking about race, this is a hero in the medical industry. We may as well talk about this disparity and how unfair that was. But I found deeper research. That's not the true story. Dr. Charles Drew was in a country road somewhere in North Carolina, had a bad car accident, and there was a clinic, the closest medical facility, and they weren't equipped to help him. They wanted to, but they didn't have the resources. So consequently, he died before he could get to a major hospital. Why did I bring that up? Here I am as a teenager, I was told a historical fact, and I have lived all these years with a misconception. And I think that's what happens when, number one, we don't take time to engage in research, and number two, just have good, honest conversation. So I believe in order for us to make progress in any endeavor we want to accomplish, especially with race in our careers, we just got to get comfortable with talking. And like Ed said, I was fortunate. I went to Florida State University. Florida State at that time period in the 80s was about 30,000 students, and I was one of the few brothers there on campus. And sometimes I did feel a little out of place, and I got an opportunity to sit in this history class, and there was a cool professor, a guy named Joe Richardson. And for some reason, Dr. Richardson took me under his wing, and Dr. Richardson became a good friend and a mentor. I remember one time he took me to his office. He said, I get these letters all the time. We want to thank you so much for all the research you have done in our community and just to broaden the base of African-American history. Because Dr. Richardson had started teaching African-American history in the 50s at Florida State. He was such a hero. And, he just chuckled as he showed me the letter because that's Dr. Joe Richardson. And his colleagues who had never met him thought he was a Black dude because of his interest in history. And, right there, I started learning that, people are really people. people are really people. We can just take some time to get to know the story. And I just was put on the path from that point on of getting to be involved in conversations after I graduated. I lived in New York City in the late 80s and the 90s. And a lot of what's transpiring now with race and challenges in cultures happened in New York City. So I was there when the Central Park Five happened, when Howard Beach happened, when Crown Heights happened, when Amadou Diallo was shot 41 times in the Bronx. He was an immigrant. When that happened, when 9/11 took place. And I was fortunate because I sat in a circle of colleagues and we talked. So what I want to encourage us today is let's just have a good conversation because there's so many preconceived notions, misconceptions, and I believe we deep down inside we want the same things. So just a couple of you share with me why you went into the medical field. Just what was on your heart?
Well, I think for me, I don't really have like an interesting story. I literally watched ER all the time when I was coming up. So that might date me. I'm a little older. But I saw it and I said, I can do that. And my mom was like, yeah, you can. And so I was fortunate to have, both my parents just basically tell me I can do anything I want to do whenever I want to do it. So we kept this, dialogue going probably from like 10 years old on, like, okay, so you said you want to be a doctor, like, let's really kind of tease this out. And then over time, I just, kind of fell into it. So yeah, that was it. George Clooney got me. So.
Well, just do me a favor. Never say you don't have an interesting story. I mean, watching ER at 10 years old and then, going into the profession. And let me do say, yeah, to all our medical personnel, thank you for all you have done. I know 2020 was a crazy year. Thank you for all the ways you have served us. So, but I appreciate you sharing that. At 10 years old, you made a decision. Okay. And anyone else?
Sure, I'll chime in. I think mine is relatively organic. I'd say dating back to 7th grade, the classic show and tell. One of my classmates' father is actually an orthopedic surgeon and came in and brought in some x-rays and showed us the intramedullary devices that he used and some samples of some bone models. And that really hooked me from there. From there, I really knew that I wanted to at least be an orthopedic surgeon. I had no idea how to get there, but that's kind of where my drive and desire began.
From show and tell. Wow,
Yes,
that's
sir.
cool. I like that story. Thank you for sharing that.
I was fortunate enough to be exposed at a pretty young age. My father is an orthopedic surgeon, actually is still practicing into his 70s in North Carolina. And so I was exposed early, but, he also told me and my two brothers, neither of them who've gone into medicine, it's a really tough road and you've got to really love it or else you won't be happy. And, I ran towards blood and injury, whereas my brothers ran away from it. And always something that I found interesting and loved how the community supported him and, the esteem he had amongst others and his ability to heal and, people just walking up from the neighborhood and knocking on the door and saying, hey, can you help? And him saying yes every time. I loved that. And, I obviously eventually followed in his footsteps, even though I felt that it was a very personal decision on my own.
Okay, so another story of family support. Sound like an amazing dad. Thank you for sharing that.
So I grew up on a farm, an emu farm. For those of you who don't know what emus are, it's the the like 5-foot tall flightless bird from Australia.
Oh, okay.
And, yeah, so we had over 250 emus, and my first like medical experience was I was about 10 years old, and one of the emus that was maybe about 6 months old got intussusception, or no, that's not what it's called. It's when the guts come out the back and they're hanging out. I forget, I'm not a GI doctor, so I can't remember what it's called, but it's not a good thing when your guts are hanging out. That's
I kind of followed you on that one.
I remember that from medical school. And so we called the emergency vet, and they were at another emergency and they couldn't come. And so they coached my mom over the phone with what to do. And my mom's afraid of animals, even though she ran this farm. And so me at 10 years, I was the only like child laborer available to do the work. And so I manually got all the guts back in the emu and then sewed his butt shut until the emergency vet could get there. And I'm not sure if that's the way you would treat it these days, but that's what they said to do then. But it was really cool. It was a really interesting experience. So I thought I was going to be a vet. And you know, my family kind of just said, well, whatever you want to do, just do it. And they didn't, you know, put barriers, and they were just like, yeah, whatever. Kind of like Dr. Fraser said, like they said, yeah, if you want to do it, just do it. You know, either way. So I kind of thought I'd be a vet. And then as I got older, I realized I might get a little more satisfaction from the human interaction, you know, direct, you know, healing relationship with people, talking to people. So I switched over in freshman year of college from kind of thinking I was going to be a vet to being a human physician after doing some shadowing.
Well, thank you. Dr. Coleman, you won the prize for the most unique story. You were how old doing surgery?
I was 10 or 11, and the emu was about as big as me. So it was interesting.
Wow. You know, I look at this panel.
Prolapse.
Yes,
I'm sorry.
Prolapse. That's the right term. Yes, that's it.
Thank you, Dr. Frazier, because I never would have gotten it. But hey.
Hey, that's the internal medicine in me, man.
I love it. I love it. I look at this panel, and you guys are a diverse group. I mean, we have 2 women here. We have 3 people of color. Is this typical for the medical profession? If I were to go and just visit different hospitals and have these type of conversations, would I see this type of diversity in a panel?
No, you wouldn't.
No.
Quite honestly, you just wouldn't. And you know, it depends on what particular specialty you're talking about, Dr. Patterson. But if we kind of drill down on orthopedics, 1.4% of the orthopedic surgeons are African American, 1.3% are Hispanic. Michelle, help me with the email. I want to say 12. Is it 12?
No, it's 6% are orthopedic surgeons.
Okay, so 6% female. So this is not the usual for orthopedics. And even so, and orthopedics is the worst specialty in diversity when it just comes to diversity. I think all medical specialties are definitely behind in that realm compared to the number of medical students that are matriculating over and then making it, you know, past training and into practice. But orthopedic surgery ranks last.
Okay, and just listening to your stories, it seemed like everyone had this vision as a child. So are we saying children no longer dream of becoming physicians, surgeons? Are we saying the opportunities aren't there for these dreamers to go into a field like orthopedic surgery?
I think the opportunities clearly exist, but you know, I do think that there are potentially, you know, even more barriers than you know, other fields. And you know, I do think that unfortunately, you know, when people are in a small group trying to focus on, you know, does somebody fit the culture, I think you run into issues of kind of keeping things the way that they have been rather than working on changing them for better representation. And, you know, I think a lot of the reasons why these things happen aren't necessarily intentional. And I think that conversations like this are very good to find ways of intentionally changing it to better reflect the way that it should be rather than the way that it has been.
Mm-hmm. So especially for the women. Did you all encounter challenges as you were going into a male-dominated field? And if so, how did you overcome it?
Go ahead, Michelle. You're the orthopod here.
You know, I think there were challenges, but I don't think I don't want to say I wasn't as aware of them, but I didn't pay as much attention to them. You know, I think I knew looking around me that there weren't as many women interested in ortho. And I knew looking around, you know, at faculty, like where I went to med school, for example, that, you know, there weren't as many female faculty in ortho. And I remember going to my first American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons meeting, which is like our big ortho meeting. And I think there, you know, typically over 50,000 people attending that meeting. I remember walking around and not the only, but you know, seemingly the only women who were there were the real pretty reps dressed in their cute little suits trying to sell stuff. And so you know, there were points where I kind of looked around and thought, you know, there aren't that many women, but that's okay. You know, we just need more women in every field, and that's fine. So I think some of the challenges were more just feeling alone as opposed to, you know, I didn't ever have any man tell me you can't do this. If anything, I felt like there were a lot of men along the way who encouraged me and who, you know, kind of said, girl power, you can do it, you know? So maybe some of the challenges were perceived, but not realized. I guess that's how I would say it.
That's good. So you had men encouraging you
Yes.
along the way. Are there any particular doctors that stand out that you remember?
Many. I would say almost all of my mentors have been men, you know, because there aren't that many women that I've trained with. So, I mean, the only female mentor, you know, that I would say was a closer mentor was in med school. I had someone who was an internal medicine doctor, a hospitalist, kind of general medicine person, and she was awesome. And we talked about women's things, you know, but for the most part, all of my mentors have been men. You know, in medical school, you know, I had 2 or 3 men who encouraged me, some in orthopedics, some outside of orthopedics. You know, a lot of my mentors have been centered around research because I'm very interested in research. So that's usually where I find connections with people, and you kind of get to know people deeper as you work with them longer. But yeah, so I mean, I can't tell you. I mean, I kind of like to collect mentors, and I love, you know, learning from people and learning from their wisdom. And so, yeah, a lot of men along the way have been there for me.
Okay,
And
that's good.
advocated for me and been, you know, introducing me to people and supporting me, you know, all the different things that make a mentor a good mentor. I've had all those examples along the way.
Now, you said something that is so crucial, someone to advocate on your behalf. Do you all agree, other panelists, that we need advocates, especially if we are trying to go into a field where we are the minority in a sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely need that. I'm a mentor myself, so I always, you know, try to make sure that my mentees know that I'm readily available and present at all times. Like, you know, I'm approachable. You know, I look 12 already, so they already have that kindred spiritness with me. So, but beyond that, yeah, just letting them know that I'm there and we will get through it together. And if you need anything, I'm sure if I can't do it, I know somebody who can to, you know, help you along the way. So yeah, I think advocacy is certainly important.
Cool. So, Dr. Augustine, what would you like to share with the gatekeepers about your journey? For
So
that
I think
7th grader who is sitting there intrigued with medicine, what would you like to share?
as with the other panelists, there's certainly a parental involvement and influence. I think for myself as, you know, first generation immigrant, that our parents certainly expected nothing but excellence, and a drive towards academics was a way to sort of secure your future and help support your family. So I think that was certainly important. As far as, you know, the journey to becoming an orthopedic surgeon, I think sort of at the 10,000 foot level, all of us, you know, had the academic, you know, rigors the time constraints, et cetera, as far as the pressures that are involved in terms of becoming an orthopedic surgeon through residency. But I think sort of at the more granular level for me, I mean, I always knew that where I trained on the West Coast, I think I was one of 30 as far as residents of color in my program. And it took maybe about 8 or 9 years, 8 or 9 years prior to myself, there had not been any residents of color. And then maybe a few years after I was a resident, we had one as well. So I think race was, I always, of course, knew and understood, myself. I never tried to ignore it as far as race being the issue, but I didn't internalize it as far as making it something that had a negative impact on what I wanted to do. I think many of our panelists of color would agree that, as an African American male, for me in medicine, I always had to work twice as hard to be at or above the level of my non-African American peers.
So you feel like you had to prove yourself?
Correct. In a sense, I think that's just what it took because of, the folks that were quote unquote in control and determined, admissions, et cetera. When they saw an African American candidate, in my eyes, you had to be A+ or you weren't getting in.
Did anyone else feel that way? That you had to prove yourself?
Yeah, I think there's always that in the background. Like, even if you have the grades or the right recommendations, there's still always a sense of you have to be just a little bit better in order to push along on the same playing field as your counterparts. So you couldn't just half butt it, for lack of a better word. Like, you had to come with it, go hard or go home each time. So yeah, I think there's always that little thing in the background. It's like, you gotta press out your suit. You can't come wrinkly, kind of thing. Even if your counterpart can come wrinkly, you can't. So yeah.
Wow. So Dr. Whitfield, when you hear your colleagues share that, what comes to mind?
Well, I feel very fortunate that I didn't have those barriers. It was still a struggle for me, and medical school is hard for everybody. And, every extra thing that you add on to it. I mean, I remember having, kids in residency, for example, and thinking of the other residents that, weren't going through that and how much easier it might be. And, I'm sure something similar is there. You don't have something else taking up your time, taking up your energy, or that you feel that you have to fight against for the sake of making it in your profession and in your school. So, I mean, I feel for them, and I hear you, and I've seen it happen, unfortunately.
And thank you for your honesty. Thank you for sharing what you've seen, because I know one of the challenges as a man of color, when I am feeling as though I have this struggle, and I talk to a counterpart and they're like, no, no, it's not that bad. No, that's not what it is. It's almost, it is dismissive, but it's also very frustrating, because you want to feel as though you can talk with your colleagues and your counterparts about what you're going through. But Dr. Jackson, what's on your mind? Like you have something you wanted to share?
Dr. Patterson and I spent a lot of time together. He knows. So, from my perspective, and I agree with what Augie and Fraser shared, I experienced that as well, or felt that as well. Another thing that for me personally is to try to overcome the one-upping or doing twice as good is I try to assimilate. I try to put myself in the inner group by adopting some of the behaviors, language, dressing, where you go for vacation. I try to put myself into the majority group, into the white culture, and almost pretend as if it really didn't exist, right? I just needed to be more like them and they would accept me. And I find myself kind of in a peril, like I was almost on the, research term for it is code switching. When you're one way, at the office and you're a different way at home around your neighborhood, friends and all family and all that kind of stuff. So I experienced that as well.
So is code switching a negative thing, Dr. Jackson?
I think depends on the context that we're talking about,
Okay, so we're talking about you're trying to advance in your career.
Yeah. I mean, that was my brain. That was what my brain was telling me. Do this so that you can get to the next step.
Okay, so you were about surviving so that you could thrive. So for those who feel as though they code switch, what are you communicating? We shouldn't code switch?
No, what I try to, for me personally, I try to explain to people is don't lose who you are, right? Don't lose who you are as a person. Don't lose who you are in the culture that you grew up in. I grew up, in Louisiana and, the country parts of South Carolina, and I have Creole roots that go deep in a lot of French as well as African-American and Haiti culture, right? And so don't lose that part of you to try to just fit in for this case of trying to make a career advancement, because that's not healthy for you. That's not healthy for your kids. And when you lose who you are and where you come from, I think that's a dangerous place to be.
Okay, I appreciate that. Anyone else see how Dr. Jackson sees it? Or do you think that, okay, there is a culture because we have a job to do and we're trying to accomplish a goal here at the job. And when we go home, of course, we have our friends, our family, our life. So is it a negative thing to assimilate into a broader culture so that the ultimate goals can be achieved?
I think it's a very interesting question. And I think as a woman in orthopedics, the old culture of orthopedics was sort of that locker room mentality. This is a bunch of meatheads, a bunch of jocks, and they just hang out in the locker room and they cuss and they talk about women and they're vulgar and they have, nudie pictures up on the wall in their call rooms. I mean, that's old school orthopedics. And, I think if you're a woman and you're trying to assimilate into that and you really are almost forced into that, that's bad. I think there's a level of assimilation that's definitely negative and destructive. I think all of us assimilate to some extent when we go to work, regardless of, the culture that we come from, because none of us are as professional at home as we are at work, no matter what. We all make jokes that are different with our spouse than we make with our friends. We all make, different jokes with our family than we do with, the next door neighbors. So I think there's some level of assimilation that's appropriate to have boundaries and different levels of comfort and openness with different groups. But I think there's a line and it's different for every person. And I think it has to do with stifling who you are and what your values are versus, just cleaning it up a bit. I think cleaning up is okay. I think when you feel like you can't be honest about who you really are, it starts to go down the wrong path. And it's interesting as a woman thinking about interviewing other women who come, for example, for our residency here. And for every woman, unfortunately, I think, can this woman appropriately assimilate into this program? And not that they have to change who they are or that they have to be something that's exactly a certain mold, but they need to be able to at least assimilate to enough of a level that they can get along and that everyone can enjoy each other. So, I mean, I almost view it as a, part of being a professional is you have to some extent assimilate. But at the same time, I think, well, this woman is very different and I like that about her and she needs to bring in something different. And I like, to bring some diversity, but at the same time, it's like, what's the line between she's so different that everyone's going to think she's an alien versus she's so different and we need that because it brings some life and some difference and some clash, it's a hard question.
That's good. So are we do we feel, can we say it's time for the culture in some of our organizations to change?
Oh, I think everyone would agree with that.
And what would be the best way to start making organizational change?
I think it involved diversifying the leadership, because I think a lot of organizational changes begins from the top. So
Mhm.
having programs and having intentional acts towards diversifying leadership is at least one component of it.
So Mike, that kind of goes to a question that we have that I think is good to interject right now from the audience. And the question is, besides conversations, how do we diversify, and I would say the field of medicine, but specifically field of orthopedics. I know we have a MSK community, but since orthopedics kind of trails at the end, how do we diversify orthopedics? And so I just want to second Augie's comment that it's a reflection of the leadership. You know, when you see that diversity and you see people of different, you know, gender groups, identity groups, you know, that really is a dynamic shift in the organizational culture. So just to introduce that question so we can get other thoughts around that.
That's good. I like that. So I guess the question also would be, how do we approach the traditional leadership in a way that people will hear it?
What do you mean by hear it?
If we are unhappy with our work environment, someone has to take responsibility for it, and someone has to be willing to speak out and say, this needs to change. And what I've noticed about, because I'm working with a couple of companies now, if the CEO, the top leadership is not ready to change it, it can come across as grumbling, complaining, a disgruntled employee. And yet, what is the best way to convey what we're feeling? We need this to change so that older individuals can hear it, whether they are been in their career a long time or chronologically are older.
I mean, I think it takes it's kind of hard because the second to that is folks are asking us like, how do we do this without beyond conversation? But yet it starts with a conversation. So I think it has to be enough of a group of individuals. Like there have to be enough people saying the same thing in order for it to finally resonate with the powers that be. And you also have to have enough folks within that group of individuals who are bold enough, because I know a lot of us, I mean, you see it with all of these movements that are going on. I'm just thinking about Andrew Cuomo and like the Me Too movement and everything. So folks are starting to finally speak out about things that have happened to them, you know, in the past. And so I think you have to have enough of those types of individuals who are finally bold and courageous enough to stand in the forefront and say, this is the issue. And then maybe have like one or two people behind them backing that up and saying, and here are the examples. And then you have a few people behind them, you know, saying, okay, yeah, you're right. And this too. So you definitely have to have a group, and you have to have that group stand strong for a long time, because the change is not going to happen overnight. The things that are in place didn't start overnight, so it won't end overnight. So you have to have those people gather other people, switch out, take breaks, take a nap, wake back up, come back in, you know, in order to finally see change. And it may take 5-6 years, unfortunately, but if we can hang on for that length of time, then we can see some progress.
That's good. Who's willing to be invested for the long haul?
Right.
And I will say, as orthopedic surgeons and just physicians in general, that's a challenge for us, right? Because we grew up and get trained in a culture of, we want to cure you right now. We want to fix you right now. So we are in a very, and we say the microwave society, we want what we want, how we want it right now. that's what medicine teaches you, is like, we got to change your deformity right now. We got to change your instability right now. We got to change your labral tear right now. And so when we come to these issues, it's somewhat challenging to get people to slow down. You can't swing that pendulum that fast, or else if you do, it can become unhealthy if you swing it too fast, too soon. And that's a whole nother conversation. But just to give the person that asked the question, you know, there's data driven behind diversifying orthopedics, right? So the data says, number one, you got to have a pipeline program. You have to have a pipeline program. So you have to start introducing said field to potential interested candidates early on in their learning and development. High school, I mean, it's even stretching down to middle school. So we have pipeline programs that are designed for high school, college, medical students, getting them exposed to the career earlier on so that they can debunk some of the myths that come along with orthopedics, which Michelle have alluded to, which Augie has alluded to. So that's been researched and that's been tested out, and those pipeline programs do increase in applicants' percentage of matriculating on to orthopedic surgery. So that is a hardcore thing that you can't, a tangible thing you can't do, but that started with what Fraser talked about. Somebody had to have a conversation, a leader had to stand up and be firm. And I think we've done a fairly good job with that here in this department with Dr. Bowden. Dr. Bowden has stand up. He said, hey, this is important. We're running with this. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here tonight having a whole division that's dedicated to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I think those two things are powerful.
And you know, you talked about a pipeline, which really is a support system, because as I reflect on each one of your stories, and you know, Dr. Jackson, I know your story, everybody in this talk had a support system. So I'm thinking about that kid that lives on the south side of Atlanta, who has the talent, who has the skill, but mom is working, you know, dad is just not that engaged, but this kid could do something. So that is the individual. We bring her into the pipeline and we create an environment like an incubator for her to do well. So I definitely see that. And many organizations do have some type of internship, some type of mentoring, shadowing. I know the boys at Morehouse are always asking about opportunities just to see, is this something they would want to venture into? So thank you for sharing that. Have you all created a pipeline type of scenario?
I'll let Dr. Kanua and Dr. Coleman speak on that.
Yeah, I'll chime in for that. So we have the Summer Scholars Program. It's for college juniors and seniors, as well as first and second year medical students. Our target audience is women and people of color who are interested in potentially going into orthopedic surgery. We expose them to the clinic, we expose them to the OR, we give them career-related mentoring and discussion talks, and also expose them to different skills sessions so they can better understand orthopedics. And finally, we just do networking, you know, letting them get to know people and giving examples and potential mentors and showing, hey, there are other people of color, there are other women in orthopedics, and, you know, you can do it too if you'd like to. So we definitely have that here at Emory, and Dr. Bowden has been incredibly supportive of that. And, you know, we're really happy to be able to provide that to students and sort of help with the pipeline problem. And I agree, you know, with Dr. Jackson that if you don't have a pipeline, you don't have future leaders. If you don't have people going into the field, you don't have the next generation to pick up the flag and say, we're not doing it the way they did it yesterday.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah, I'd also like to say that because you mentioned the South Side, and Jackson and I go down there for football, you know, because we do the outreach. And so you mentioned mom and dad, but let's take it even a step further. Mom and dad aren't even there. Grandma or auntie is taking care of, she's the guardian, or he's, you know, grandfather, which is kind of rare. So some of the outreach I know, and we've been kind of trying, but kind of failing as well, getting to those individuals, because there are, at least when we are on the sideline, there are several kids that are in like the athletic training group, and what have you, and they are eager to have these experiences, but nobody's got a car, or there's no like busing, there's no transportation for anybody to get to some sort of summer immersion or anything, or they don't have the money. And so we've at least tried to start the conversations to set up little assemblies, if you will, like in the high schools for those kids that can't get anywhere, but know that they want to do something else than kind of be on the street, but they just don't know what else is out there. And I know some of them are interested in medicine, but don't really know, well, what does that look like? And is it only being a doctor, or is it, I can do something else? And so I think to have those programs started as well, in addition to the stuff after you hit college, because some of them will never hit college,
So
to
is
get
it, I'm sorry,
that
go
type
ahead.
of initiative. Go ahead.
So is it time to invest more resources into outreach? Because sound like
Yes.
you're just saying community outreach.
Yes.
That is good to know. That is good to know. I know we're getting close to our time. I do want to talk about, it's been a year, it's been almost a year since the George Floyd killing of summer unrest, unlike ever before, probably since the 60s. What have we learned as a people, as individuals? What have we learned? Because one of the things, well, I'll say what I'll say afterwards, but there's a reason I'm asking this question.
We learned a lot. I mean, I'll say I've learned, I mean, obviously, not obviously, but I knew racism wasn't dead. I just, people are hiding how they feel overall. So I guess I learned how emboldened people could be, like how crazy some folks could get with their feelings towards other racial groups, or, even other communities like LGBTQ or something like that. And how selfish people are. I mean, beyond, or actually, I guess, combined George Floyd, pandemic, everything, just people kind of doing whatever it is they want to do. And we had leadership in the White House and in Congress, like kind of egging this on and allowing it. And so I was just floored by how emboldened and everything people could be. That's all I'll say.
Thank you.
I also thought that we were, as a society, progressing and working towards not being so racist, sexist, classist, all of the things. And, and I think I was probably mistaken, as many people were, going into 2016, of how far we've come, but still how far we have to go. And, when I say we, how many people out there that were not necessarily like-minded and were happy with the changes that were occurring. And so, I've learned a lot in the past year or two. It's really encouraged me to read and to listen and to try to understand, not being affected by it on a daily basis, not having as much of a personal connection to it, is spending extra time really learning, getting myself educated so I can, understand the perspective of others that don't feel the same, and, figure out ways of how do we change? How do we grow? How do we heal? How do we, come out of this and continue to create more inclusion and diversity and education and acceptance and all those things along that path.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. I think, the George Floyd murder was certainly a moment of inertia for a lot of us. For me, it was kind of a pivot from fantasy to reality, in that I think we're all living, a lot of us were living in America thinking that, racism wasn't as quote unquote bad, and we've come a long way, but in reality, it really hadn't. But I have been encouraged to see people that do not look like me that were sort of arm in arm with the Black Lives Matter and other movements. I think that was certainly an encouraging and refreshing to see.
Thank you.
I completely echo all of the sentiments that were shared. I would add just a personal thing that I feel like in a selfish way, my life has really been enriched by, all these conversations that I've been having since George Floyd, because, my Black friends and I got so much closer, after that, because of the conversations and the depth of understanding that I felt was gained after, having these things to talk about, these national things, these high profile things happening that we could really talk about and share values and learn from each other. So for me, that's been the positive, I know it's very negative because I again completely echo the sentiments of being on social media and seeing people that I know and have liked and respected and seeing the things that they write and going, whoa, I didn't know you had that in you, and I didn't think even if you did have it in you, you would ever say it. So that's been the negative side. But on the positive side, I just do think it has helped me to understand people that I already loved so much more, and to motivate me and to give me a little more fire to put some effort into anything that I can do to help improve all of the different issues that have been raised after the George Floyd killing. So for me, it was kind of like a call to arms, and it was kind of like, okay, this isn't old school, racism is dead, and it's, yeah, there's still some prejudice, but racism is dead. It reminded me racism is real and racism is today, and my friends get affected by it, and I'm not going to stand for that. So for me, I think it was because that stuff was happening, even though people didn't know about it. So for me, it's just better that I know about it, and so that I can do my part, to help in any way that I can.
I appreciate that. Dr. Jackson, you have the YouTube I sent you?
So, obviously a lot of my background in this area comes from my relationship with Dr. Patterson and what he has trained me and taught me. African-American people have been having this conversation for over 400 years. And so the joy for me was to sit down and have a conversation with Dr. John X. I remember when it all went down, X was like, oh, I'm fired up, man. We got to talk. And we got on the phone with him and another one of his co-residents from Pitt, another Black guy. And we got on the phone with Mike. And so it was me, Mike, X, and Dr. X's friend, another Black guy. And man, we had an amazing conversation. We had a challenging conversation, but we were listening to each other. We were hearing each other's perspective. And then my second highlight was talking to Dr. Whitfield. I mean, that conversation that Dr. Whitfield and I had really gave me hope for what we're able to do. Because here's the thing, everyone, not every white person is racist. There's racist things that I got to deal with in my own life. So I think it's sitting down and having a conversation like I had with X, having a conversation like I had with Dr. Whitfield. And I know some people may say, oh, it's just talking. It's a heart issue. We got to get down to the heart and listen to each other. And once we understand one another, then you get statements like Dr. Coleman was like, well, shoot, let's go to war together. We're arm to arm. What can I do to help? So it was very refreshing to just have allyship, because quite honestly, it's people like Dr. Whitfield that, when they stand up and they speak out, people will listen to that. So that was the reflection for me.
Thank you, Dr. Jackson. Is that YouTube clip queued up?
So I do not have it queued up on this machine, Mike. Maybe if you talk and I may be able to.
Well, I do want to say I appreciate everyone's honest conversation, and it's been a lot. It's been a lot to process. It's been a lot to work through. It's been a lot to think about. But I think the beauty of it is making strides forward. I think that's the most important thing. We can't get anything accomplished yelling and screaming at each other and canceling people. That conversation is crucial. And even if we feel like our story is not that important, is not that impressive, the strides that have been made in this country historically have been by everyday people. It's everyday people taking the time out to work together, to conversate together, and to really be what I call peacemakers. And that's what this our nonprofit is about. It's just helping everyone understand we got to do our part. Thank you, Dr. Coleman, for what you said. I talked to my friends, and I'm sure they felt grateful that someone would just listen. And Dr. Whitfield, thank you. What what Dr. Jackson said, we were able to have some honest conversations. And I appreciated when you said, I didn't experience that. I can't relate to that. It doesn't mean you dismiss it, but there's an honesty there because we don't need, oh yeah, I've been through hard times. No, it's like, hey, this is what I've been through. So I appreciate what everyone shared. And you're right, Dr. Augustine, and it's been a battle. It's been a battle. And I think it would be hopeless if there weren't true peacemakers, people with the heart of, you know what, I'm staying in the fight. Dr. Frazier said something that was very insightful. It takes time. It may take years. Are we going to be invested long enough to see the change come? Because culture doesn't change overnight. Someone said it wasn't built overnight. It doesn't change overnight, but the steps that we're taking together to move forward, I think that is the key. And that's my hope. That is my hope. How we doing, Dr. Jackson?
So Mike, if you stop sharing your screen, then I should be able to share mine and we should be able to go. All right. Y'all let me know if you grab the sound here.
No sound.
I can't hear it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this it's something with the sound that doesn't transition.
Okay, well, thank you so much for trying. But anyway, I can just summarize it. That was a clip with two great abolitionists. Um, and really what they did is that they came together to figure out, Frederick Douglass and William Lloyd Garrison, how can we make a difference in America? One of the big misconceptions of American history that has always been a black-white issue, has always been a race issue. And no, it's not true. There's really, and if you go back and you look at some of the movies like Harriet, there have always been whites who wanted to treat people humanely, treat people with respect, who allied with African Americans to make life better. And my encouragement is we got to find allies. I have spent this past year looking for allies, not trying to convince someone that race is an issue. I don't have that much time left on this planet. I don't want to fight with you and really, really give you all the stats while race is an issue. But I've been so fortunate. I spent the latter part of 2020 building allies. Say, okay, can we find common ground on how we can move forward? And it's been encouraging. It's been, Dr. Jackson has been involved in some of these conversations. I feel like it has been a fruitful time. So, Dr. Jackson, thank you all so much for this time. I know you've had long days, and it is probably time that I think we're on that 6 o'clock hour to bring this ship to the dock. So I will give this into you, Dr. Jackson.
Well, thank you, Mike. Appreciate your participation in this amazing discussion. Man, just an incredible opportunity for us to continue to grow and continue to develop the culture that we all want. I know we all want the same thing. And so we're just excited for the opportunity for you to share, for each one of my partners to share. It's an honor to have this discussion with people that you're in the battlefield with every day to help take care of people. And we know that we all value each other in this department. And, you know, we have our work that we need to do, but man, it's been an amazing ride so far. So I appreciate everybody's time and their efforts, and not only this panel discussion, but the whole month of February, and for every last individual that has contributed to the efforts of FOSSIL. Big thanks to Dr. Bowden and Mike Hattery, our leadership, for supporting us in everything that we do and anything that we want. And we would not be able to do this or be here without them. So in closing, we look forward to continuing the conversation. Y'all know I always love to say we continue the conversation, and we're starting to implement some of those changes in a fashion that will continue to allow our culture to be inclusive, to be diverse, and to be equitable. So we appreciate everybody's time this evening, and we will see you in the future. Y'all have a good evening. Good night.
It's a pleasure meeting
Thank you.
everyone. Thank you all so much for your input.
Likewise. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Dr. Patterson.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Dr. Patterson.